There we go. I think it takes a couple of seconds, and now we seem to be live on YouTube. Great. Let's wait a couple of minutes to let everybody join in before we start. So for everybody just joining us, this is Product Tank Stockholm, 24th of February, and we'll start in just a minute. Let me while we wait, let me show you the lineup for today. We have myself here. All right, let's get going. So, hi everyone, welcome back to Product Tank Stockholm. We are still remote, but it feels like the tide is finally turning here, at least here in Sweden. 2 years ago, we had a meetup with the title "How has COVID changed our business?" or something like that, and we're revisiting that topic today, 2 years later, but from the perspective of what we've actually have learned. And with us today, we have a returning guest, Francesca from Hemnet, one of Sweden's most popular and largest products. And you were actually here 2 years ago talking about how you have changed rapidly at the beginning of the pandemic. And then we have all the way from sunny California, we have Abby from Amplitude is joining us and talking about what you guys have seen during the pandemic. A lot of product people are using your product for analytics, so it will be really interesting to hear your viewpoint. And we have a third speaker. We had a third speaker, Stephen from Productboard, which is another tool which a lot of product managers use. He had unfortunately had to call in sick today, but he's looking forward to join the next meetup and present. And before I just leave it off to the wonderful speakers, just the short intro that I always do. You know, for you guys joining for the first time, Product Tank, we're a informal meetup I think we're in almost 190 cities today around the globe. And our aim is to bring product interested people together, become better at our trade and learn from each other and trade learnings. And next meetup, hopefully, will be in person. We'll get back to that. We're targeting maybe early April or late March timeframe. And speaking of that, we're always looking for sponsors, since when we meet in person, we need to be someplace with preferably with food and snacks. So if you have an office or another venue that you would like to sponsor us with, please reach out. And we're always looking for speakers. So if you have a topic you're really interested in and want to talk about, please also reach out. Our contact information is in the meetup page. And for today, we're broadcasting on YouTube, so you can always go back later and check the recording. And you can also ask questions. So you just need to just leave a comment, and we'll see it from here, and we'll try to answer it swiftly. We do. So just anytime during the talks, just drop us a line in the comments if you have any questions. And with that, let's hand it over to Abby. Welcome to Stockholm.
Thank you. Let me just get my screen here. All right.
There we go. And I'll leave the stage is yours.
Awesome. Thank you. All right, well, I'm excited to be here in Stockholm by way of California today. But yeah, to kick us off, I'd like to start by asking everyone here a question. What is your work superpower? What makes you really good at your job? Take a moment to think about that. Maybe if you want to leave a comment, feel free. But once you do that, ask yourself also, has that superpower changed since you started working remotely? One of my work superpowers was actually collaboration when we were in the office, but adapting to Zoom meetings didn't really come easily to that skill. So I had to think through new strategies to actually help the team collaborate in a remote setting. Specifically, I definitely got really good at noticing when people unmute during Zoom meetings. But of course, collaboration is just one work superpower. There are many different types of work superpowers that you can have. And today I want to share a little bit about how you can actually make data or analytics one of your remote work superpowers. As product managers, we're often looking for ways to engage our cross-functional teams. And I actually found that over the past couple years that you can actually use analytics to drive that team engagement and collaboration at each step of the product development cycle, especially while working remotely. Just quickly before we get into that, a little bit about me. Eric introduced me a little bit, but I work at Amplitude as a principal product manager. And if you don't know Amplitude, we are the digital optimization system, which enables organizations to see and predict combination of features and actions that ultimately translate to business outcomes. As PMs, the way you might be most familiar with Amplitude is as a product analytics tool to really understand how users use your product. So our agenda in this short talk will be first walking through Amplitude's product report, which helps lay out the state of data in 2021. Essentially, why should we even care to talk about data in the first place? And how things have actually changed in this remote world around data. Then I'll share a little bit about how these changes are actually driving what we call data democratization within companies. And finally, then I'll share some practical tips, hopefully practical, that you can take back to leverage this democratization at each key stage of the product development cycle to make data your remote work superpower. So first, like I mentioned before, we think about making data our superpower. We should first answer why we care about product data at all. As PMs or in the product world, we might have always been thinking about quantitative data to some extent. But actually in the last 2 years, since COVID, we've all seen how the rapid shift to digital has forced really entire industries to rethink how they actually bring value to customers. And as the brain behind over 6,000 digital products across over 1,400 companies, Amplitude actually has a really unique window into understanding how digital products have grown and adapted during COVID. So data is critical, of course, to building amazing products. And we released this report to help product leaders benchmark and optimize their own digital products. And if you're wondering how we did this, we have what we call our behavioral graph, which includes 900 billion plus data points tracked every month across all the companies that send data to Amplitude, and really provides an expansive and anonymized view into digital activity. And when we looked into this graph, we actually learned, around what's changed in the past 2 years, that daily active usage of digital products has actually increased by 54% since January 2020. And this growth comes as industry competition has really never been more fierce. So the IDC actually estimates that by 2023, 500 million plus new cloud native products will be developed. So essentially, there's a lot more data out there coming from a lot more products. And so finding your competitive edge has never been really more critical. Going deeper, our data even let us learn that globally, fintech growth, for example, is actually off the charts over the past couple of years, with 337% growth in daily active users. By comparison, we could also see that e-commerce growth has been steadier, around 56%. And travel is down by 18%, maybe unsurprisingly. And there's no better way to actually make sense of these trends than by understanding the results of some of the quickest growing products, which is why we actually set out to predict some of the next hottest products in the market. And specifically here we have the ones that we found for EMEA, which might be interesting to all of you. And the way that we did this was we analyzed aggregated monthly user data in our platform to identify companies that could become really the next household names. So we looked at companies and products that showed exponential growth in total number of monthly active users over the 13-month period from June 2020 to June 2021, according to data sent into Amplitude. And so of these, we have the top 5 from EMEA. And of those, actually 3 have announced a recent funding round in 2021. So this momentum actually just reinforces what our data is indicating. For example, one of the next hottest product companies, for example, is Oda, which is a Norway-based startup that's transforming the future of grocery shopping in Europe. So definitely keep an eye out for these up-and-comers. Maybe use it for your next job search potentially. And I'm sure we'll be seeing a lot more of these in the year to come. So kind of getting into what this means for us, with this surge in the usage of digital products, teams have really been kind of huddling together over webcams and brainstorming, what can we really do to win over customers and build engagement in this really competitive market? And in this process, data has really become every team's best friend. In other words, we're seeing that data democratization is actually taking place. So if you look at this graph here, we can see that customer success, data science, product, engineering, marketing, they're all looking at product data in Amplitude. In fact, for the first time since we founded Amplitude, we actually saw that the number of customer success roles using Amplitude surpassed the number of data scientists. And you'll notice here that many of the roles are really not in product or data science. So we're seeing that data is really being leveraged across organizations. Now, at the same time that data is becoming more and more prevalent in organizations, we've also simultaneously faced problems during this remote world around how going remote has made it really more difficult to engage team members and have them be on the same page. And maybe now if you're going back to the office, people might be distracted by kind of being in person and all the new things that are opening up. And so, of course, as PMs or in product teams, we're often looking for ways to engage our cross-functional teams and drive alignment with them. And at Amplitude, we experienced this exact same problem during COVID. And one thing that we found was that data actually could be used strategically at each stage of the product development cycle to actually get teams more excited about their work and more aligned. So with that, I'd love to share some ideas for how you can actually use data at each key stage of the PD process. So of course, there's many different stages and this can vary across companies, but overall, typically we think about kind of the problem definition, solution definition, and then results and the next steps that come out of those results. So I'll kind of share some ideas for each stage of this process. So first, thinking about the problem, it's really important to deep dive into a problem with the team and really share all the relevant quant and qual data with them. And you can use this deep dive to really keep teams aligned on the why. So really taking the time to make sure that they don't just understand some high-level stats, you're really taking them along the journey of all the learnings that got to the point where you were actually writing out this PRD or this product requirement doc or a one-pager. In addition, you can also do a deep dive session into how you actually chose the success metrics for an initiative that you're working on. Some questions that you might want to ask your team at this stage are, what other metrics might we use to measure success? And are we being ambitious enough with these? And I think you'll be surprised with how the team can push you to think bigger. I've seen engineers really push back on, hey, I think we can actually drive up this metric more because of some ideas that I have. So just as an example of what this looked like for us at Amplitude, one of my teams was building a feature called My Workspace, which essentially allows you to refine your existing analyses quickly and reliably in Amplitude. And this actually came out of a finding that for new users of Amplitude, they were having a really hard time sort of re-accessing or refining their own content or charts that they were creating in Amplitude. They kind of went into a black hole. And so as we sized out the opportunity for this feature, we shared each learning with the team in our shared Slack channel so that everyone could actually stay aligned and weren't surprised by what we were working on. We also brainstormed with the team all of the possible metrics that could measure success. And what that really led to is that people were more bought into the feature's results because they had actually had a hand in setting the goals for the initiative. Next, during the solution phase, if you've kind of done these steps from the problem stage, teams are going to now have a much deeper understanding of that data while they're actually designing and building the solution, which should ultimately actually lead to improved rigor in that process. And one thing I want to call out here is that it's really important to bring design into the process here and offer to pull metrics for them or have them pull metrics themselves to actually define the solution. And I think what you'll find is that you'll ultimately design better solutions when every team member actually has a say in what reports are getting pulled. So going back to that kind of content finding problem, sharing what we did at this phase, we had landed on the idea of building a personal workspace that showed all users' recent content from Amplitude so they can kind of get back to it. But what we had a question is how many thumbnails, previews of those charts should we actually show on this page versus just, lists of charts. And our designer actually used Amplitude to determine the optimal number of saved chart thumbnails to show on the page based on how often users were actually saving content in Amplitude. So using that data, we were able to get to a place where we were more likely to get that thumbnail number right from the start. If you don't have Amplitude, it's a little bit more challenging to pull data at your companies. You could offer to query the data for design or make requests of data science. But I think the key here is really asking design directly what data might help them, what would really help them design a better solution. And I think asking that question can really up-level the quality of the products that you're building. Finally, of course, you'll want to evaluate and share results of the metrics that you decided. But there's also a key phase of going into the deep kind of learnings and figure out and iterate iterate on really what you've shipped. So one activity that I recommend during the results stage is to actually have a session where you dig into all of the results and ask the team what questions they want to see answered about the experience that they shipped. So really make it collaborative. The best strategy that I found here is to first do a deep dive into the metrics yourself. So kind of, try to answer all of the questions that you can think of or that you think the team might have. Then go ahead and run this session and ask people their questions. And what's kind of fun in this session I found is that you can then kind of surprise the team when you already have the answers to some of the questions coming up. Or you can just take note and be sure to follow up on those answers. And these can be really fun and memorable learning sessions with the team. On our team, we do these kind of collaborative brainstorms around questions that people have after every release. And we've actually heard that engineers frequently say that it's their favorite meeting at Amplitude. Finally, once your findings are documented and shared, you can use them to actually crowdsource new hypotheses and, of course, start this kind of loop process all over again. And I think what you'll find is by aligning on data throughout the process, everyone on the team already probably has really high value ideas on what to try next based on all of the shared learnings that you've invested in. So just as an example, going back to the My Workspace or the personal workspace feature, we saw positive results with that feature when we shipped it to solve the content finding problem. And so after that, we wondered whether or not that page might actually be an effective homepage and entry point into the Amplitude product. This idea was actually generated during a team brainstorming session after someone asked, hey, where do the majority of users actually navigate to directly after opening Amplitude? And the answer to that question was that they directly navigate to their own content. So that gave us the idea to actually then iterate and make this an A/B test of making My Workspace the homepage. So that came out from a team member idea based on all of the shared learnings that we've been working through. So ultimately, product analytics is not just for product people. Definitely want to open data up to other people on your team. And impactful decisions, a culture of learning, tying outputs to outcomes doesn't happen in a vacuum. And so leveraging, this increased focus of data that we've seen in the current market and over the past couple years, and doing so with your cross-functional team will ultimately lead to better decisions, faster actions, transformed experiences really, and ultimately empowered teams. And before I hop off and take any questions, we also just wanted to highlight that Amplitude, speaking of getting back together in person, is going to be hosting a live meetup in Stockholm, actually on March 17th. So you can hear from Zettel by PayPal around how they actually use product analytics to grow revenue and retain customers. So hopefully this could be another event that might be interesting to this group. And I think we'll drop the link in chat for that. And lastly, if you're interested, I only shared a couple of the stats that we found over the past couple of years of how data and product has changed during COVID. So if you want to learn more, you can also check out the product report. I think we'll also drop the link in chat, but you can also just Google Amplitude product report and you should be able to find that. So with that, I'm happy to take any questions that come up or hand it over if not.
Thanks, Abby. Really, really, really interesting. As you say, if you have any questions, just drop them on YouTube, and we'll answer them now or afterwards. And I have a question. It was really interesting to hear about the workspace feature and how you developed that. Are there any other any specific Corona request or that you got in the product that was very specific to the whole pandemic or remote working?
Yeah, I would say that in general, a lot of features have been coming up around just making sharing a lot, have a lot less friction. Something that's really interesting about Amplitude is one of the ways that we definitely see people learn Amplitude is just by going over to someone's desk and kind of iterating on a query together. And so that process, of course, kind of stopped during COVID because people couldn't just sit next to each other's desks. And so one thing that we found was that we were getting a lot more requests for making it much easier to share ownership of charts and kind of make people co-editors of charts and just kind of reduce friction around that collaboration process that we hadn't seen as much in the past. So with that, we actually are prioritizing some of these kind of bulk sharing features and more collaborative features over the next year. But yeah, I think one of the critical ways people learn Amplitude is together. So I think that's been a big change during remote work.
Yeah, that's a really good point. I mean, that's been my experience also. When it always amazes me how many different ways you can interpret data, and especially now in COVID, when you just drop a dashboard on someone and you can have different interpretations of that. That's really, really cool.
Exactly.
You guys, Christopher and Sebastian, do you have any questions to pop up?
I have a question regarding the democratization of data, actually going back to that. So I thought it was really interesting to see there was actually more engineering users than product users of the Amplitude platform. Has it always been like that, or have you done something actively to kind of increase the level of democratization of the data?
Yeah, I think a few things. We've always had engineering be kind of a major user of Amplitude, but I think over time we've just seen that product has actually even gone down in the share as we bring in these new types of users. I think one of the core things that we did when we built Amplitude actually was this core philosophy that everyone should have a playground in Amplitude and be really comfortable editing. So I think in BI, things are quite static. You can just filter a dashboard, or you're afraid you're going to change some report that everyone sees. But one of the core ways that Amplitude actually works is if I share a link to you and you edit that chart, nothing changes with your original chart. You can kind of send back different edits of charts back and forth all day without affecting the original chart. So I think this just makes people more comfortable to jump in and feel less worried that they're going to make a stupid mistake that messes everyone's charts up. But with engineering in particular, I think we spend a lot of time trying to make engineering a champion, because one thing is that you may have experienced this whenever you worked with to try to instrument data, but it's not the most fun thing in the world to instrument data. So we do a lot to try to improve our developer experience to make them a little bit more interested in using Amplitude. And as a result, we actually have found, and kind of speaking to the presentation, that when engineers are brought in and they're actually shown the data being used in Amplitude and the results of the data that they instrumented, the instrumentation process, people are a lot more willing to do, because they get why they're like spending time like implementing these events, and they're actually seeing the results of that in the product. And so I think that's something that is unique about Amplitude that's helped, win over the developer.
Cool. Thanks.
Cool. Thanks. Let's save the rest of the questions for after Francesca's talking, and let Francesca up on the stage here.
Great, thanks everyone.
Thank you, Abby. Let's see, there you are. Hi, Francesca, welcome back.
Thank you. Can I do one thing that I started to do since COVID? Thank you, Abby, for a great presentation. Applause. That's what I do every time at Hemnet. It's like when you talk to a screen, you never get any kind of reaction. I think it was great. I was following, and really great applause to you. I'm the applause starter.
Yeah, that's a very good suggestion, Francesca. It's like talking to a black hole sometimes during COVID here. But welcome back. Fun to have you here. It's happened a lot in Hemnet. You've IPO'd, for example, since you were here.
This small thing.
This small thing. How's life as a listed company?
It's great. I think like one thing of great being public is that Hemnet has always been, one of these products that everyone loves, and now everyone can actually get a share on Hemnet for real.
Yeah.
So that I think it's, that was a really cool thing for me with the IPO. And I think it's a little bit today, like it feels a little bit like the end of the circle, because 2 years ago I was here talking about, okay, what we just did with our product when COVID just like happened. It was, what was it, like April maybe, 2020?
Yeah.
That we had
Yeah.
Can it be?
You talked about, did you do was it the virtual
open houses?
Show? Yeah, virtual open house. Yeah, that's cool.
Yeah, I will touch on that. And today I will be talking a little bit more about what we learned. Doing that feature was one thing, but I think that COVID changed, not for us at least, not just our product, but more than anything, the way we work. And that's what I want to talk about today.
Cool. Don't let me stand in the way. Let's go.
I will start talking to my black hole again.
Yeah, go in the black hole. I'll remember the applause afterwards.
Yes, thank you.
I'll do a little bit of applause here when you're
up on stage. Thank you. I think you see my slides, right? Normal. Do you see my screen? That's like the normal question.
I'll add it to my bingo card here. Can you hear me? Can you see my screen? Okay.
Perfect. So I call this presentation the COVID effect, because really, like, what I want to do today, share with you some really our journey, I want to say, at Hemnet and what we learn doing that. But before I do that, I just went into like talking about myself and Hemnet. And normally when I do this in a room, I start with asking how many of you know what Hemnet is, and then I ask like to go up with hands, and normally in a room in Stockholm or in Sweden, I have pretty many hands up. But for the ones that do not know, for Abby and the ones in California who have absolutely no idea what Hemnet is, Hemnet, it's the largest property portal in Sweden. So it's the place where you go when you want to find or buy a property, or to sell a property, or thinking about buying or selling. But it's not only that. Hemnet is one of the biggest websites in Sweden, and this is like one of my favorite numbers. It's 38 minutes that every Swede spent on Hemnet in 2020. So basically, we have a number that can be calculated per capita. And to me, it's the very first time that I work with a product that is so loved and used by everyone. And I think that that is really cool. And one thing that maybe not a lot of people know is like how many people work at Hemnet. And we are 130 people working there, and roughly 50% it's product development. And I'm Francesca. I'm CPO at Hemnet since 2019, and I lead product there. We are 7 PMs today, all working in their own cross-functional team. And before Hemnet, I've worked with a bunch of other products. I also tried my own startup that did not really work out, as many product people do. And I've been working with product for 10 years. So that's who I am and what Hemnet is. So with no further ado, what I want to talk with you, or what I want to share, is like how the pandemic influenced the way we work. And also want to share 3 really concrete framework that I hope you can start using for your hybrid collaboration. And to actually talk about how the pandemic influenced the way we worked, I kind of like mapped down our path or our journey there. And it started in March 2020 when I felt like that cat upside down, when basically it was like, okay, pandemic, what's even happening? I mean, we didn't even know what we were talking about. What's COVID? What's like everyone is closing down and lockdown and so on, which transformed for us pretty quickly though in phase 1, which is like, how can we help? We have a position, we have a product that everyone uses, we can do something. So the first thing that the pandemic did, it changed our product, and I'm gonna go into that. But once we did that, then we went into the second reaction, was like, how can we handle uncertainty? So how can we plan for this? How can we make sure that all these things that we don't even know how they're gonna pan out disrupt the way we work? How can we actually move forward? Which we did. We started scenario planning, and I'm gonna share how we did it. And then when we did that, we went into a third phase, which was kind of a long one, and was like, pandemic? What? We just keep on doing what we do. We just do it from our living room or for our office room if we're so lucky that we have one. And we continue for that for quite a while, until we realized that actually pandemic, I mean, as strange as it might sound, was actually a way of finding new possibilities of how we work together. And we then landed in some hybrid work toolbox that we are still using as we speak. So let's start this journey. I will gonna go through all these different phases and what we've done and what we've learned. First step, it's me, pretty much like this cat. And I mean, it was March 2020. And it was for us, we were in the kitchen, we had at Hemnet, we had this kitchen in the middle of the office where we have all hands. And all of a sudden, our head of people said, okay, guys, maybe we don't know what's happening. Maybe take your computer home. We might start working from home from tomorrow. And we did. And 2 years later, we're basically still having our computer home. But the very first couple of days for me and for many of us were really like panic. I mean, we didn't even know what to do. And this actually lasted for us literally a couple of days, because then it came this day, Friday the 13th on a leap year. It sounds like the beginning of a horror movie. But for us was actually the beginning of the first phase, which was, how can we help? The very first thing was like, okay, in the pandemic, we don't know, we have a position, we actually can do something. And we did. So our very first reaction for COVID was, let's build something. And that's what I talked about 2 years ago. We did this feature that is called Hemnet Live, which basically was virtual open houses. So we thought that if this, I mean, back then, we didn't know if Sweden would go in lockdown, if it would be possible to still go around. I mean, it was really a lot of uncertainty. And we thought we have a position and a responsibility to make sure that the housing market doesn't stop. So in case people cannot go to different apartments or different houses to see them, then we can help with virtual open houses, which is what we built. And we built this feature in 10 days. You can go back on YouTube. You're surely going to find this talk. It was really fun. It was really challenging at the same time. It was really code-driven product development. And I still think about it as one of the biggest thing we achieved together as a product company at Hemnet, that we actually, from nothing, in 10 days we were able to launch this feature. And this is the very first thing that pandemic did to us. It changed our product. The feature is still live, still used 2 years later, alive and kicking. But once we did that, and we did this in a fairly short amount of time, then it was like, okay, but how we do now? I mean, we basically did what we could do. We did not really know what will happen to Sweden, to us, to the market, to our main KPIs. And this uncertainty was kind of eating us alive, I want to say, because I mean, there were so much energy, so much thoughts that went into like trying to figure out something that was really out of our hands. And that's the second thing that we did. We were one of these company, I mean, I want to say lucky companies that were not affected really with the pandemic. Abby mentioned about like hospitality or a flight. Of course, I mean, we were not in those shoes, but actually planning for worst case scenario really helped us. So what we did is like, we did it in a kind of time boxed way. So we started with define what matters. So what were the couple of metrics really that we will act upon, that will be like red flag, act now, sirens, and SOS going all fledged. We started there, and there were not 10, there were like a couple. So we know really like when to act. And then we designed how to act. So every product team had really 1 week when they were asked to create cases and scenarios. I mean, what would you do if this happened? And we put them on paper, and we had them there, and we had them prepare. So we knew that if shit hit the fan, we knew what to do. And then this, it was March. It started like we were going towards end of March and beginning of April, which for us meant quarterly planning. So what I also decided to do, and I want to say I was not the most popular person at that time when I did that, but I decided to be a little bit stricter than I'm usually am with the direction for what we would focus on for Q2 2020. So it was a little bit more like, not so much discovery, if one want to put like that, a bit more defined things to work on. And then we did that for Q2, and then we continue, and Q3 onwards, as I said, I mean, the pandemic did not really change our plan. None of this scenario were needed to be put into action. None of the metrics actually changed a lot. But what was really important for us in learning, that having a clear plan in case something will happen actually helped us to handle uncertainty and focus forward. And that's like, pandemic taught us that. But I mean, this could be applied anytime, when you have a feature or something that feels scary and you don't know when this could go wrong and this could other go wrong. We started to actually write down, okay, what can actually go wrong and what we would do if that go wrong. And from that, we actually act a little bit more. So that was a really interesting learning. But when we did that, basically, then the time went by and we were like, okay, we were home pretty much like this girl. Some people maybe were actually going to work from bigger places or like summer houses, but we were still doing things as we used to. And we did that for quite a while until November 2020. And if you're thinking about it, something happened with the pandemic in November 2020. Didn't really, but one big thing happened for us at Hemnet, which was the rollout of a new product strategy. So for me, it was quite a big thing. I have prepared like this product strategy. I started to get some inputs, and all the strategy was based on buy-in and actually any product team understanding their part in this strategy. And I was all prepared and everything, and then I thought, hit me. Everyone is home. How do I roll this out? Because I mean, this is how I would have done it, right? I would have started drafting it, and then I would have some meeting with my PMs first to get some input, and then most likely half a day or an entire day to gather the product organization to talk about it, then having a Q&A and final presentation. And you see one thing in this slide, there is a word that is recurring quite many times, which is meeting, 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 meeting. And I mean, meeting in themselves are not bad if they help you going forward, but having engagement through meeting remote would actually be a challenge. Because if you think about it, the 3 steps that were really important for me to have this buy-in would require long meetings, people being like online, being concentrating, taking in information, understanding, me getting a sense of like, are they with me or not? It was pretty impossible. It felt pretty impossible to me to do that via a screen. And I couldn't do it like any other way because, I mean, people could not meet. So I was like, literally for a second, I was like, crap, how do I do this? Until I realized that I had another way. I could use remote tooling to serve me instead of thinking of them as a way of, you know, as something that would stop or block me. So this is how I started to do the rollout. First 2 steps, same. I was fortunate enough to have the possibility of gathering my PMs in October. We had like one window in Sweden when we could meet, and we were like 10 people. So we were like in all the criteria met. So we met, and I'm really grateful we could meet because there we had some rich conversation together that helped me put together a strategy. But then the other steps, if you remember, like all those meetings, I redesigned them for physical distance. So the first one, instead of having a meeting where I would explain the strategy, what I did is I recorded video, and I did not record 1.5 long hour video because, I mean, who wants to look at me for 1.5 hour? I mean, nobody, not even myself. So what I did is like I did short videos. They were max 20 minutes that were possible to be watched asynced. Everyone could watch whenever they wanted. And also like you could choose if you would watch all the videos, then you will have your entire product strategy and that would be pretty much like 1.5 hour. Or you would just watch like the part of the video that it was like intro and the one connected with the target group you will work on. And then it will be maybe 30 minutes and you could do this whenever you wanted. After the video, I started to collect asynchronously questions, both with a form and with a Slack channel. And there I started to get a feeling of like, what are they asking? What is unclear? Then I also prepared like digital meeting, but where there was actually sync communication. So I started with the recap, I answered some of the question, but I also opened up for discussion. And there, I mean, that was one of my proudest moments because this was a non-mandatory meeting and I had like 90% of product development at Hemnet showing up to that meeting, like really showing that there was like a big engagement. And then last one, it's like the final version, but then I already had a lot of videos and all the material that was recorded. So I could easily scale this up and share with the other part of the organization. I didn't have to take meeting there either. So you see all these green boxes. The process was redefined to actually work a little bit like in a tango with sync and async, with actually things that could be done with not everyone in the room and some with everyone in the room. And when I did that, it was really a life-changing moment almost for me. Because when I did this and when I experienced it, I realized that there were so many good things in thinking this way. So for the first time, it's really inclusive because you as a person, you can decide how you consume information. If you want to watch video, if you want to give feedback in a completely anonymous way, if you want to ask on a Slack that is open, I mean, you could do it as you wish. And that is also includes like more type of personality. It's scalable. I mean, I had to put in a little bit more work in the beginning, but in the whole process, that really helped me, like in time-wise. It also really good, like this way of people like watching videos and giving feedback in different ways gave me also different feedback loops. And I adjusted, wording or like thinking new things as I went, instead of having all the feedback collected at once in one big meeting. And last but not least, having those video and like time for reflection before the Q&A section actually led to a much better outcome from the question. I mean, much better question that were asked. So for me, it was like, Eureka! I mean, this is something. I mean, this is like, we could really use this to our advantages. And so we did. We started like from this, actually, that was a success, to start thinking differently. And from the pandemic constraint, we actually innovated the way we work together. And how we did it, it's really based on two really simple ingredients, I want to say. The first one is like start with the expected outcome. And I mean, in my case was like, I want to involve, I want to have people opinion, I want to have feedback. And as I would have done it, it would have not worked. So before executing, think about how you used to do and do it in a way that will help you with the outcome, not as you were used to. And this is also a little bit of mind shift. Think of this as a process, and having different steps. It's not a bad thing. And I mean, it will not make you slower. It's something that will make you faster, actually, if you do it right. So with that, we started a very new hybrid toolbox. And now I'm going to share 3 things that we have been using since that November 2020 that have been really working for us at Hemnet. The first one, it's async information, or as I put it here, do we really need to gather everyone to share information in the same room? Question mark. You might already know what's the answer if you ask me. But one thing that we do, we use video, for example, instead of meeting to share information, and we use meeting to gather feedback. So why video? I mean, video you can consume at your own pace. And also what I found on my own skin, actually, that videos is much easier to give context and tone of voice than writing a message, because you don't get a written message tone, and you can misinterpret it. While video, it's more difficult. I mean, you see the person speaking. And of course, it's more efficient than a meeting because you don't have to gather everyone. And when do I use it? I use it when I want to share context, for example, before OKR planning or before the strategy, or before, for example, when we started to create new teams, when I want to explain the why, for example. And of course, when it's one-sided information. I mean, you don't, of course, I mean, it goes without saying, you don't communicate with the screen. One thing to keep in mind, though, video is super practical. You might have this idea when you start trying them and they work, then you tip all to that side, that is just video. But async information only could be read as avoiding feedback, that I just giving you info, I don't care what you say. That's not at all the point. That's why combining with some sync like meeting is really been working for us. First tip. Second tip, I love this one, async ideation. And I mean, to me, it's like when I look back how I used to do ideation, I kind of feel a bit ashamed because I think back and I think, okay, I was trying to put everyone in the same ideation box. And it feels really wrong. I mean, not everyone think the same, not everyone act the same, not everyone comes up with the idea the same. So why should we use the same method for all? Doesn't make any sense. But that's how I did it for quite many years. How I used to do it, like pre-pandemic, when I had an ideation, I would prepare the stage, set the stage, like sending some pre-reading material or like something, preparing like my public, my audience in the meeting. But then, I mean, you're probably familiar with this. I mean, that big meeting where everyone writes post-it, right? We've all done that. That's how you do ideation, or that's how I did ideation. And then after that, we will sum up and have some other session maybe. What I do now, I mean, first the last step are the same, but instead of having one meeting, I have again a process, like 3 steps. What I start is like still setting the stage and so on, but then the first ideation is actually doing asynchronously. And we use Miro. You ask everyone to go there to put their ideas. You give a time frame. They can put in there whenever they please. They can go back and they can change if in the meanwhile they thought, okay, I thought it was the good idea in the beginning. Now it feels like a completely stupid idea. You can take it away. Then you, as the facilitator, go in and cluster already, so you see like trends and pattern. And then sync, you do the discussion. So you don't take the time for the sync to do ideas, but you talk about ideas. And I assure you that this for us has brought to much better outcome. So instead of one meeting, 3 steps. And then I have the last tip, and this goes against a little bit what is actually best done face to face, and hopefully now that we can actually start meeting face to face. For us, it was really clear that when we had to do something that required a kickoff or richer conversation, that when we've done that only remote, we missed out a lot, and there were a lot of misunderstanding or misalignment, and did not work really. So what we start to do is that we prioritize face-to-face time at the beginning of a new strategy, a new year, a big change, whatever. And this is, you see here, me and our technical director, Christopher, we were at Fotografiska talking about like our strategy again to when we could actually have everyone in the room in October. Because we could have a deeper, richer conversation that are harder online. It's also much easier to see if someone is not really on board. And also, I mean, this is to me is like the most important thing. As product people, we many times have a lot of touch points, and we work with so many different persons in the company. And if the only connection we have with them is when we Slack or send whatever, a message or an email to work, that threshold and that barriers becomes higher and higher and higher. And that has been really like a friction point for us that 2 years later, I really see that's not sustainable in the long run. So that's why we try to facilitate ways of meeting. So to summarize, COVID innovated all our business, if we want it or not, but we could also see this as a good thing. We could embrace new ways of working. And if there's one thing that I would love you to take with you, is like try one of these 3 things that I described. I mean, they're really easy. Don't make it like hard on yourself. Videos, I mean, I did it with like Google Meet. They were not edited. There were like some errors, whatever. I mean, it's not meant to be perfect. It's meant for you to test something exactly as we test things in our product. And if you want to hear more or anything, if you think this is interesting, you want to have a conversation, you can reach out to me. I have my website when I write most likely or almost always about books that I read or like things that I do that I think are interesting to share. And also just a little bit of this, we're also hiring. So if you're interested at working at Hemnet, I'm actually right now looking for PMs. So you please reach out to me, LinkedIn, whatever. I'm here. Enough with like this hiring thing. So I'll stop so I can see you again. That's it.
Thank you so much, Francesca.
Thank you. I'll do my own applause.
Okay, so let's see. Thank you so much. Let's see if we have any questions from the audience.
We have from
Yes,
Anna
we had a
here.
question from Anna. I think maybe we need some more context. So Anna, if you're there, maybe you can give some more context to that question.
I think the question was around the scenario planning there.
Okay.
I think so. It was also one of the questions I had there. I mean, did you can you give an example of any scenarios you might have had, or did you have any use of the scenarios? Or
Sure. I mean, for us, it started like what were the three things that we will act upon if they will start, you know, go wild. And I mean, when we looked at other, I mean, one thing that I always have is a dialogue with other property portals. There's a Hemnet for every country. I mean, in US it's Zillow, for example. I mean, I have so many dialogues with those other CPO or product people there. And one thing that they saw, for example, is that there was a drop in listing. So basically, like there were not new listing anymore coming in the platform. If there's no new listing, new properties, and nothing to look at. If there's nothing to look at, no one is gonna come at you. If nothing comes at you, the traffic goes down, and like the business suffers. And it's like it's listing revenue, but it's also advertising revenue, and like it starts with this evil circle. So for us, one scenario was like, okay, what will we do in case we don't have new listing? Listing stops to come in. What do we do, for example? And it never happened. Listing continued to come in. But one idea, for example, was like, oh, we could, use the listing we have and do some more kind of an inspiration. We can have a page or like shuffle them. So you could see old ones or new ones, showing some picture, that's a way of keeping people coming back to Hemnet anyway, even if you don't have the new listing inflow. I mean, that was one case scenario, for example.
Yeah. It's like that old Eisenhower quote or whatever it was, with the plans are useless, planning is essential.
Yeah.
That you had you made use of the of this stuff in other ways also. Cool. And on the, I mean, it seems like you found some really really great takeaways here from the pandemic. You almost found the holy grail here. But will you continue working remotely going forward, or are you going back to the offices, or are you keeping what are you keeping going forward?
We just actually had yesterday and today, we call it Culture Week. That was kind of like, let's take back our office thing, where we presented the Hemnet way, our ways of working, which is basically, it's based on two things. Again, really simple. In one side, there is trust. I mean, we trust our employee to do their job. They don't have to be in a specific place to do their job. I mean, if there's one thing that I hope everyone realized, is that there are few people that need to be in a place to do the job. Us working with the digital product development, it's not this category. And I mean, it's like we trust people to do the work. And we also want to empower them and have the accountability on them. So, I mean, we have an office that's open. You can go there, you could go there during the entire pandemic. We encourage to meet when you kick off, or like when there's something that you're gonna feel in your stomach, when you need to have a rich conversation with people. That's when we expect people to meet, but we don't expect people to meet X days per week or whatever. I mean, that's not how we're gonna do it. So it's a lot of flexibility and a lot of accountability.
Yeah. It seems like when we're talking to other companies, it seems like the approach almost everybody is taken. There are some standouts, that are forcing everybody back to the office. We need to be there, etc. And I guess that has some kind of edge. Also, some people like it that way. And yeah, how's it over with you, Abby? Do you recognize these examples, Francesca?
Mm-hmm. Yeah, it's interesting that you mentioned kind of the kind of bringing people back in. Amplitude is, remote friendly for many roles. But what I have even heard in the interview process when hiring candidates is some are specifically interested in Amplitude because we are a little bit more office culture. And a lot of people have been really tired of remote and are actually specifically looking for companies that are not remote. So that's been really interesting, because I will say our team does have hybrid culture and people who are remote, but most of my team, 95%, is in the Bay Area. And that is attractive to some people, of course, not at all to others. But yeah, definitely resonates everything that you were saying, especially around like feeling in your gut when it is that you need to be in the office and have those meetings. We actually just had a 3-hour jam on like a pretty big proposal we might make to changing some core aspects of our sharing platform. And we met up for 3 hours in person, and it was far more productive than it would have been over Zoom for that type of conversation. But for things like regular sprint planning, like operational meetings, like there's no reason that we need to be in the same room for that. So it definitely resonates.
You feel like it's hard to get buy-in from the rest of the teams, to get everybody into the office? I can feel that sometimes that it's because it doesn't really work, when 9 out of 10 people is in the office, and there's the solo person that's sitting alone in a screen somewhere at the end of the room. And
it does take pre-planning to get people into the office. That is, I think, the most challenging part, and I don't think we really have that down yet. I do think the idea of this, we're starting this thing called Product Development Tuesdays, where most of the product development team comes in, and we try to do fun things like also have like lunch delivered or make it a happy hour at the end of the day. And so it kind of becomes this like extra reason to come into the office. So that's when we had the brainstorm. So we think about things like that to make it like really beneficial to come in for that one day, so that it's not that people are missing out like every other day on some sort of meeting. But it is challenging.
It's challenging.
Yeah, but I think like that requires a little bit, maybe we forgot how it was. Like we are so used that everyone can join from anywhere. We forgot how it was. I'm not saying we should go back to how it was, but I mean, if you make it really clear from the beginning that, I mean, this is a meeting that we wanna have physically because of, and if you cannot make it, I mean, sorry. I mean, you're not going to be the one, or either you're the one like listening in, but you're going to suck most likely because it's not done with everyone else in the room, or you can read notes later on, that's how it used to be. And it's a little bit like company before individual, or like purpose before my own specific needs.
Yeah, exactly. And people tend to forget very, very fast, I try to get people into the office, but I have football practice at 4:30. But how did you manage that before the pandemic? You managed it somehow. It's fun. So this is the time when it's beers and snacks, and everybody have a nice mingle time. However, everybody, I guess, will go back to their evening or morning in your case, Abby. But I mean, thank you very, very much for these very enlightening talks. It was really interesting to hear both your perspectives, and they're saved on YouTube, so all of you who watch can go back easily and watch it. And remember to either come work at Hemnet or join the Amplitude event coming up here in Stockholm. And we see the rest of you guys hopefully in person. In a month or two. Okay, enjoy that. Thank you again, Abby and Francesca, and have a lovely evening / morning.
Thank you. I hope to
Bye-bye.
see you in person in Stockholm soon. Enough with this digital.
Yes.
I'll come visit.
You're welcome to, Abby.
Bye.
Thanks, everyone. Bye.
Bye-bye.